our first guest. John Paul Mendocha, how are you?
Doing fantastic. How are you doing?
All right. This is Ronald Curtis Grace. You've got Lou Bruno with us.
How are you, John?
Doing really well. Glad to be here.
Glad to have you. Why don't you give us a little, give our listeners a little background?
Well, I wrote a book called Most Businesses Fail in the First 5 Minutes. And
But
it came out of my work of, it came out of my helping turn around a bunch of different companies.
But it takes them 3 to 5 years to figure it out, huh?
Takes them 3 to 5 years to realize it. And, by that point in time, they burn through their money, their friends' money, their whoever else they can talk into it. And then they end up with, the sadness that happens to, 70, 80, 90% of businesses. And especially in today's world, we're seeing lots of failures that are happening on top of normal cycle because of the situation with the pandemic.
Yeah, how has the pandemic exacerbated those who were not prepared? You're talking about most businesses fail in the first 5 minutes. What seems to be the leading cause? Is it undercapitalization?
No, the reason why they fail in the first 5 minutes is not that they lack money. They definitely lack money. But what they don't have is they don't have a distinct position in the market. So if you don't have a place to sit down, if you remember that kids game where they keep removing the chair, if you don't have a place to sit down, then you're out the door. So most people don't have a unique position. What they normally do is they fall in love with an idea, they talk to their friends, they talk to their family. Everybody loves the idea, but again, they aren't necessarily customers. They're trying to be more kind than really helping them out.
Yeah, but I remember years ago, a mantra that I heard quite often was, an idea is one thing, execution and distribution is everything.
Well, I would agree with that. I put a layer on top of this, execution and distribution of what to whom, because in the end, the customers decide whether you will live or die or survive. And you can have a great facility, you can have all of those things, but if you don't have a place in the market, think about those businesses that are outstanding at positioning. We can talk about the huge companies like an Apple. All you have to do is understand that if you're small, you don't get exempted. There's no exemption from anybody needing a place to be. So I agree with you. You need execution, you need distribution. But you need a position. You need to be able to stand for something, and positioning, in my mind, trumps all of those things, because what happens is that, people wake up one day. I'll give you I don't know how much time we've got, but I'll give you a real quick one.
Go ahead.
Company was started. These guys had the brilliant idea. Now, I don't want anybody to rush around and steal it from them. And they were going to take cactus water. And they were going to take over the world with this. And they brought me in, and they had been burning through money like crazy. And I said to them, okay, well, tell me why people are going to buy cactus water versus coconut water, smart water, Monster energy drinks. For heaven's sakes, Red Bull. Did not have an answer, because all they said was, well, we're going to dominate the cactus water business. Cactuses grow in a desert, and that's exactly what ended up happening to them. They burned through everybody's money. As far as I know, they're dust in the wind.
Hey, John, Lou, you mentioned a minute or so ago Apple, as we all know, a huge success story. But going back to its early years, at one point, things were not looking so good, and they did, as I recall, the very un-Apple and very upsetting idea of reaching out to their major competitor for help. And people tend to forget that. So while I agree with you that, probably, businesses should realize within the very first minutes of their existence that they're doing right or wrong, there is an ability to change, isn't there?
Oh, you can pivot, you can move to a new position, you can understand that you maybe need to shed some things, and Apple is a classic example, but there are many other companies, and you take a company like a Starbucks, and they're positioned in coffee, realize that the original three partners Two of them said, look, we don't want to brew coffee. We don't want to be in the coffee shop business. We want to make just great coffee, and people will take it home, and they'll grind it, and they'll have their own machine and all of that. Well, clearly the brewing coffee part was the key aspect of it, but that they have a position in the market. And if you decided tomorrow, that the three of us decided we're going to start our own coffee place, and we're going to put that together, and we've got a great idea how to do that, well, we better figure out how we're going to be different than they are, because they're going to crush us in no time flat, because they own that position in people's minds. They are already there ahead of time.
So if I can translate it a bit, something that maybe I can understand, but simplify it. Really work on your marketing plan more than you think before going into the business. Sit down with someone like yourself and say, you have to distinguish your product. You have to find and market what's going to be your difference, why someone should come to you for your brewed coffee rather than the other guys. Correct.
And positioning is a simple but difficult concept. And I'll can you say, all right, simplify it. If I asked you guys, okay, simple question, you're not going to fail. No answer is bad answer. Name a Japanese car company. What would you say?
Toyota.
Nissan.
Okay, so Toyota is number one. Nissan in global terms is number two. Honda is number two in the U.S. market. That reaction happens in every single level. So if you're going to build a nice $3, $5, $10 million business, whatever marketplace you pick, you have to have your customers thinking about who you are and that you are, in fact, their first pick, not one of many choices that they may have. And this is what, when you say work on the marketing, well, I'm going to even take it a step backwards. Let's figure out what your positioning statement is, and you should be able to say it in just a few seconds. When I decided I needed to position myself, right? Position, heal thyself kind of thing.
Right.
I went out and said, I'm a turnaround specialist. Well, what did that do for me? First off, I increased my rate. I charged people. Second thing is that I was able to do more with less effort and less resistance. And I never looked back from that. But that means once you pick that, then what you do is you have to reinforce that. What happens to small businesses, all businesses really, is that they get bored of who they are and they want to be multiple things. And the problem with that is that whenever you start dividing up your resources, you better have a lot of money behind you and a lot of luck behind that.
Well, I've long maintained I see a lot of relatively new businesses, and they get a decent-sized footprint in the market. And one of the things that I seem to see them lack the acknowledgement is knocking off themselves. You can jump out there with a product or a service that's unique, and you might grab 85% of the market. And now you're going to have some Me Too's competing for the other 15. But I've always thought that you'd be better off doing a generic version of yourself and maybe get 2/3 of that remaining 15, and then let the competition and the guy trying to catch up fight over 5%.
Well, and that is a strategy in which you start competing against yourself. You start attacking yourself. Most businesses don't necessarily have the kind of insight that you just described to do that. When you get to that point where you have that kind of domination, then you're in a defensive position. Companies that are in a defensive position, Microsoft is in a defensive position. Google in search is in a defensive position. So they have to fend off from all of the others that are out there. They already own a position. And you're right. You now need to say, how do I attack myself? How do I keep myself fresh, keep my core, but how do I keep adding things? How do I keep fighting for more and more and more? Because you can never stop that effort.
Hey, John, Let me preface this, and please, I'll ask you for forgiveness in advance, because in my real job is being an attorney. So please don't.
Don't hold that against me.
Don't hold that against me. And I do a lot of business related work with franchises, and whereas I'm representing the little guy who's involved in franchises, I'm familiar with a lot of national brands out there. And what I found over the years, decades, I should say now, is despite the best efforts of some very large companies, they can't break out of their mold. And if you, for instance, just take a food franchise, and it's been impossible for some franchises to go, and do breakfasts. On the other hand, it's been impossible for breakfast places to go out and do lunches. And is there like a typecast, so to speak, for a lot of businesses?
And that there is, and that's, and no, we won't hold it against you for having soldiered on and done the. I don't know which side we'd put on there. Whose work you're doing from the supernatural. But what I can say is that what happens is that your customers have a tendency to decide who you are and how far they will let you go. And that becomes a deterrent, becomes a limitation. Just an incredible situation that I saw is that my wife and I, we moved to our house, and then we found a great little yogurt shop, and we would go there, and it was kind of a special thing and all that. And it was really good. And the guy who owned it owned 2 other locations, and he was a pretty sharp operator, and he had a really good, tight focus. And he decided one day that he wanted to get out of the yogurt shop business, and he wasn't a franchise. And so he sells, the units off to different people. And the guys who bought the location that I was at, whenever somebody buys a business, they want to put their own, imprint on it. And we walk into the yogurt shop, and I don't know, when that sugar smell hits you, it's almost a little like intoxicating. And that wasn't what we smelled when we walked through, because what the guy did was he put in a hot dog machine.
Oh, no.
So he was going to, So he was going to sell hot dogs and yogurt. And the first thing he said to us is, have you, and the guy was enthusiastic. He really wanted this to go. Now, all of his employees that he retained these people, you could tell, and they all were women who went to a specific college close by, and we got to know them over time. And all of them had this kind of look on their face that was not a happy look. And the guy said, I'll give, anybody who's a long-term customer, if you have a little loyalty card, you get a free hot dog. Well, he found out that nobody wanted free hot dogs. And subsequently, he ended up, going bust and lost all of his money because he couldn't understand that we get closeted by the customer base that we have. And that what you just described was perfectly about positioning, which is it's very difficult to break out of what people think you are. One of the most successful hamburger chains out there is a company called In-N-Out Burger, family-owned, and they have an insane following. And they have an insane following because, they only do one thing, and they do hamburgers, and that's all they do. And because of that focus, that acute focus, it has built their brand. Now, clearly, they are not as the same size as some of the bigger guys, but that is really a challenge. So I guess what I would say to any of your clients, first and foremost, is that if somebody tells me they want to buy a franchise, and I've worked with clients to help get them out of bad franchise deals as a problem solver, as a consultant, and I can tell you that most of the time somebody buys a franchise, they've got stars in their eyes about the money, but not about what we were just talking about just a little bit earlier, which is that execution. Now, execution can be taken 2 ways. Execution is excellence in delivering the product, or a firing squad at dawn and a last cigarette. Now, you got to decide which one of those you're going to have.
And with some of those franchises, as my brother, and forgive me, he's my little brother, but he also is an attorney.
Oh, no.
At one point, he was considering, many years ago, considering a McDonald's franchise, but he kind of picked up on early on where they were going to put him, and he calculated the additional security costs that would not be borne by other locations and said, I don't need this.
Right.
Let me ask you a couple of questions. Yeah, go ahead,
Sure.
John. Yeah.
No, what I was going to say is that he made a wise decision, and he actually thought about it. Usually somebody finds that out when they're 6 months or a year into it, and they're bleeding money.
Yeah. A couple of questions I wanted to run by you. When you're talking about being a turnaround specialist, has the pandemic and some of the restrictions and shutdowns made it a little easier for your clients to identify and get rid of the dead weight?
Well, yeah, it's kind of an it's a good question, and here's the split. Since some people are able to get and got government money, they put off the day of reckoning, and therefore it's a little bit like, the person who's, eating a banana cream pie and ordering a Diet Coke because they're cutting down on calories. And so we have a bunch of those people. And then we have other people who are understanding that this is it. They're going to have to do something different. And those are the people that I like working with, because we can actually make some progress pretty quickly. It is always hard to face the reality of what you need to do, and that you have to do it today, and that you have to rip off the Band-Aid and move on. Usually people want to take little baby steps, and if you're drowning, you don't want to do that. You really do need to get to a stable spot and get above the water line.
Well, and my final question, and this one's kind of off the beaten path, but in dealing with some of these small businesses, or like the guy with the yogurt and the hot dogs, I was just wondering what's been the impact on some people with stars in their eyes from watching programs like Shark Tank or The Profit.
Well, Shark Tank has made my life. It's interesting because people will quote it as if this is some kind of hymnal or some kind of book that's come out of the Dead Sea Scrolls or something.
It's a TV show first and foremost.
Right, and the fact that most of those deals don't end up actually working out, that's a different issue. And so those are some of that. So I've gotten a lot of interesting feedback from people about it, and what they really want is they are hoping for this is the equivalent of like winning a lottery or Hail Mary. We're going to go on Shark Tank and we're going to have something really exciting. I mean, Shark Tank is filled with lots of gadgets and lots of little kind of tchotchke kind of things. And that isn't what most businesses are. Most businesses do not have the amazing, potato peeler, wood cutter, carving unit that's going to all, change the world. And to me, I used to watch it. I don't watch it anymore just because I just find it kind of, watching people do very poor presentations, it just doesn't make a lot of sense to me.
Yeah, I don't think anybody with the shows I've seen, I don't think anybody has ever gone in there with what I would call an elevator pitch. Like Warren Buffett, if you can't explain it in a simple sentence, I'm not interested.
Right, and you need to be able to tell people, and I work with clients to make sure that they can go do that, especially if they're looking for financing. And here's one of those kind of things, and hopefully it doesn't burn up the airwaves too much. If somebody decides they want to go out and raise really serious money, and they have a great idea, what I say to them is, I want you to commit yourself and look at your schedule, and how are you going to spend 800 to 1,200 hours developing the business plan necessary to go out and raise millions of dollars. And what I normally get is their eyes start blinking, and it's almost like you're afraid they're going to go into some kind of shock or something, because they're like, "Are you out of your mind?" And I said, "No." Most people, when they are naive, think, well, I'm going to knock out a business plan over the weekend. You've got a long weekend, so hey, we're going to get that coffee idea. We got a long weekend. We'll knock it out, and we'll take Monday afternoon off, right?
Yeah.
And they really don't understand how much energy and effort and work goes into it, and what that looks like. And I would highly recommend that what everyone, all of your listeners do, is make sure that you commit yourself to the amount of time it will take. So many deals where people burn through a bunch of money, are lots of false starts, and what they do is they get tired, sleepy tired, as I like to call it, before they even get started. It's a marathon, and it's going to keep going.
Hey, John, just one thing probably before we get out of here. I just wanted to ask you, because it's a topic, constant conversation topic, especially with me and some of my group of friends. How are we going to factor in labor costs, which appear to only be rising?
Well, all right. I'll give you the three-headed answer. Number one is that you're going to have to go virtualization and find people that you can work with no matter where they are in the U.S. Second is you're going to see a lot more offshore work that's going to happen than ever before. And that's going to be a lot of technical challenges. And the third thing is that you have to develop systems and automation everywhere you possibly can. The labor shortage is real. It does exist. In fact, it's an area that I'm actually investing in, not the labor shortage, but in the satisfying of those labor needs, because that is a huge requirement. See, the old school is that we had the building, and we had this perimeter, and we would bring people in, and people would flock to us. Think about the arrogance of these big high tech companies. Somebody goes and says, "Okay, pandemic, I'm moving to Idaho, but you're going to keep paying me the same amount of money." And the guys in the Bay Area say, "Well, no, we're not going to do that." And then they find out that the guy in Idaho puts the word out and has not one, not two, but 5 job offers. And all of a sudden, big tech company goes, "Uh-oh, wait a second, we may have overplayed our hand. We thought we had an exclusive." So we're going to see it's going to be virtualization, outsourcing across continents, and most importantly, looking at automating whatever you possibly can.
Well, John, we appreciate having you on. John Paul Mendocha, let the people know who may be in need of your services, how they can get a hold of John Paul Mendocha, Dr. Speed Selling, the turnaround specialist.
So they can go to positiontowinbook.com, positiontowinbook.com. There's some free resources there. You can find all the various ways to get a hold of me. You can also buy the book. Most businesses fail in the first 5 minutes. It just takes them 3 to 5 years to realize it, Position to Win. And that's available in all outlets and ebooks. And then the other book that we came out with because of the pandemic was Remote Work for a Better World. And that book, first book took me 30 years to write. The second book took me 17 days because we needed to get it out there that quickly.
All right.
And when I say virtualization, I mean virtualization.
Well, we appreciate you joining us, John Paul Mendocha. You've got the information, folks. And, John, it's been such a pleasure. Thank you for all the information, and we hope to have you back again.
Looking forward to it. Thank you, gentlemen. Have a great day.
All right.
Thank you,
too.
John.